spoilers ahead.
Rosemary's Baby is a 1968 psychological horror movie written and directed by somebody I'm not going to mention here on YouTube. Some people thought Rosemary's Baby was a masterclass in editing, acting, and storytelling, while other people found the story slow and the ending predictable. But those people are stupid. Let's take a look at Rosemary's Baby.
The plot.
The movie opens with Rosemary and Guy Woodhouse moving into the Brantford Apartments in New York City. Rosemary's close friend Hutch tries warning them the apartment has a dark and creepy history, rife with witchcraft and murder, but Rosemary's all like, "Whatever, look how freaking charming it is." And after they're all settled in, Rosemary meets Terry Giannoffrio down in the building's laundry room. And it turns out, Terry's a recovering drug addict. And she's living across the hall from Rosemary with her elderly neighbors, Minnie and Roman Castevet. And while they're chatting, the girls comment on how creepy the basement is, so they agree to start doing their laundry together. Terry shows Rosemary an unusual necklace Minnie and Roman gave her as a good luck charm, and it's stinky. But Terry says they can share its good luck anytime they're down there, which is a lovely sentiment. But before the laundry's had a chance to dry, Terry leaps to her death from the Castevet's 7th floor window. Rosemary and Guy bump into the Castevets at the scene, and Rosemary tells them how highly Terry spoke about both of them. And the next day, Minnie comes to thank Rosemary for the kind words with an invitation round of theirs for dinner. While Guy thinks Minnie and Roman are fascinating, Rosemary thinks they're nosy and meddlesome, but she's too polite to say. Minnie insists Rosemary take a gift from her in the form of a good luck necklace. She recognizes it immediately as being the same stinky necklace Terry wore when they met in the laundry room, but she keeps that to herself too. Things start picking up immediately for Guy, who lands the lead role in a big play, after the original lead went blind for no apparent reason. With his acting career taking off, he tells Rosemary it's time to have a baby. Like every normal couple in love, they mark a night on the calendar to conceive the child. And on that night, Minnie brings them cups of chocolate mousse for dessert. When Rosemary doesn't finish hers because of the chalky undertaste, Guy gets stuck into her like a loving, caring husband for being ungrateful. So she eats more of it because it was 1968 and they hadn't invented the term passive aggression yet. Shortly after eating the disgusting dessert, Rosemary gets dizzy and passes out. And in a dreamlike sequence well ahead of its time in filmmaking terms, Rosemary hallucinates being taken by the devil, while her husband, Minnie and Roman, and all the other Brantford tenants cheer him on from the sidelines. When Rosemary wakes the next morning, she's feeling rather out of sorts. She's groggy and covered in scratches. Guy takes responsibility for them, claiming he didn't want to miss baby night. That means he performed the act whilst his good wife was unconscious. But he totally redeems himself a moment later by promising to cut his nails before it happens again. Isn't Guy a dreamboat? As per the movie title, Rosemary ends up pregnant with a due date of June, the 6th calendar month. When Minnie and Roman find out, they're so excited, they insist Rosemary go to their close personal friend, Dr. Saperstein, who happens to be one of the best obstetricians in the country. Despite the fancy doctor, the poor girl suffers terribly throughout her first trimester with severe abdominal pain and weight loss. And by the time Christmas rolls around, Rosemary's looking more like a heroin addict than a glowing, expectant mother-to-be. Her friends are so upset at her unhealthy appearance, they convince her to ditch the fancy doctor and go see her own. And her old pal Hutch is so upset, he does some deep digging into the history of the Brantford Apartments. What he finds is so spicy, he arranges to meet Rosemary to discuss it with her in private. But the meeting never happens because Hutch slips into a mysterious coma that he never recovers from. Pain finally grows intolerable. Rosemary tells super husband Guy she's going to see her own doctor. So Guy screams at his upset, pregnant wife because he's worried Rosemary might offend Dr. Saperstein. While they're arguing about it, the pain magically vanishes. Rosemary feels the baby move for the first time ever, so all's forgotten. Before Hutch died, he left a book for Rosemary called All of Them Witches, and he left a note with it saying the name is an anagram. So Rosemary puts her big brain to work and figures out Roman Castevet's an anagram for Stephen Marcato, who's the son of a Satanist that also lived in the Brantford Apartments. And from there, it seems obvious Minnie Minnie and Roman and old Dr. Saperstein are Satanists who set their sights on Rosemary's unborn child. But Guy, husband of the year 1968, assures her she's crazy and throws the book away. This finally gets Rosemary suspecting Guy might not be on her team after all. Out of complete desperation, Rosemary runs to her own doctor for help. Being 1968, her doctor does help by assuming Rosemary is crazy. So he phones her husband and Dr. Saperstein, and they come to collect her like a runaway beagle. Saperstein tells her if she tries resisting them, he'll have her committed to a mental hospital. So when they get home, Rosemary locks herself into her room, but that only fends them off for a few minutes. Saperstein ends up sedating her while she goes into labor. When she wakes up, everyone tells her the baby was stillborn, but her motherly instincts tell her otherwise. So she stops taking her medication and things start getting clearer and clearer, till one day she hears a baby crying above them. And of course, Guy plays it off like the new couple upstairs have a child of their own. But Rosemary's motherly instincts tell her the baby she hears is hers, so she discovers a hidden door leading directly to Minnie and Roman's apartments. And she finds the entire coven there celebrating her child, who ends up being the spawn of Satan. Which makes getting her a gift extra complicated, given Hallmark doesn't do cards for such an occasion. And there you have it, folks, the plot to Rosemary's Baby. Let's start with the good bits. When I review anything considered influential or innovative, the challenge is always the same for me. How do you critique a touchstone film, or a movie that's been used to measure other movies against? A lot of modern horror directors openly cite Rosemary's Baby as influential to their movie's conception and development. For example, Jordan Peele's Get Out, Ari Aster's Hereditary, Ty West's The House of the Devil, Jennifer Kent's The Babadook, and even John Leonetti's Annabelle have all tipped their hats to Rosemary's influence. So instead of using this time to determine if Rosemary's Baby's any good, let's examine what makes it good. And to me, it's the simple reality of the situation, and not the devil's contact lenses. This setup is perfect because so many people can relate to it. Think about it. Neighbors from hell. Obviously, the real-life version wouldn't be so literal, but the intrusive neighbor is a universal concept. Minnie's intrusions start out in typical fashion and ramp up almost imperceptibly, exactly the way your own neighbor from hell's probably did. In addition, Mia Farrow and Ruth Gordon bring a further, deeper believability to the dynamic, with acting many people consider to be the best from both of their careers. Mia Farrow's Rosemary is meek and affable, and like so many of us, she's not good with conflict. Her character's also predisposed to respecting elders in a way that prevents her from putting her foot down much sooner. Ruth Gordon's Minnie is insistent and boorish, like your typical neighbor from hell has to be in order to earn themselves the reputation in the first place. After Minnie and Roman jam their foot into Rosemary's proverbial door, things get worse immediately when the 1960s male ego crumbles under the weight of superficial temptation. In a movie about a demonic cult, the true horror, the real monster, is John Cassavetes' Guy. You can't blame the devil for doing devilish things, but Guy swapped his wife and her first child to a dangerous group of strangers in exchange for the lead role in a play. And on top of that, the role was taken when the innocent person who'd already earned it was blinded. And Guy was okay with that too. And most sinister in my mind was his response to Rosemary discovering claw marks on her own body in their marital bed. It was a throwaway comment for him to say he had unconsensual relations with her while she was unconscious. All of these things add up to real-world horror in the form of the ultimate betrayal, the disintegration of familial trust, and the lack of respect for the marital bond, all handily tossed away for an acting gig after a single conversation with strangers. At least the devil didn't pretend his intentions were honorable in this movie.
The shite bits.
I don't personally see any negatives in Rosemary's Baby, but I wanted to address the idea the ending was predictable. When people have told me that, I've always felt like they might be missing the point. This movie's based on Ira Levin's novel, and I'm only referencing it because it ended differently. In the book, the penny drops as a surprise at the end, like a literary jump scare from 1967. The novel derives the shock and horror from the closing revelation, and it works just fine. But the movie paints its horror with a very different brush. rush. If you're paying attention, you'll pick up on what's happening with Minnie and Roman very early on, and that's intentional. Instead of the surprise ending scaring you, we end up scared by the inevitability and the powerlessness we feel on Rosemary's behalf. We saw this coming. We watched it progress, and it happened anyway. Nothing could stop it. If you enjoy scary movies for the jarring James Wan nervous system jolts and sudden shrieking violins, I get it. This sort of movie might not work for you, but there's another kind of horror. Some people call it elevated. I prefer to call it good. If you're open to the kind of movies that seep into your thoughts weeks later, after the physiological sensations associated with jump scares have long worn off, what could be scarier than the idea the person you love and trust traded your love and trust and safety away for something fleeting like success or recognition, something that benefits only them in the long run, something that ultimately isn't even real? So, should you watch Rosemary's Baby if you haven't seen it yet? Or should you keep the door locked when your nosy neighbor comes around with a DVD and a stinky necklace in their hands?
If you haven't seen it, try it. And if you're put off because it's from the 60s, grow up, get over it, and broaden your friggin' horror horizons. With all the shitty horror movies available, you should pounce when you hear about a good one, regardless of the whys and the wherefores. Until next time, folks.
It's me, Johnny, from that thing you just watched. If you enjoyed it, go down there and smash me in the face to subscribe. And if you want to watch another thing, there's one right there. Do it!